Well, I'm really excited for a new episode of the Bengals Beat Podcast. I have been looking forward to this episode for a long time, and it's crazy when you first meet someone, but you feel like you've known them your whole life, and that's exactly how I feel. So I want to take a second and introduce you. My guest today is a very special guest because she's in studio, but she's a very special woman. So I'm really excited to introduce Emma Kelly to the Bengals Beat Podcast. First, Emma, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm like smiling so big. Yeah. I feel like we have known each other. Our backgrounds are so similar that we just connected on that. We kind of do know each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a number of reasons why I want to have you on the podcast. But to start us off, because this is usually a football podcast and this has a lot to do with football, your husband is the Indianapolis Colts center, Ryan Kelly. And for those listening that don't already know this, both Emma and her husband, Ryan, are Cincinnati natives. So that's what makes this week extra special for you guys, because in addition, I know you go to most of Ryan's games, but you're getting a trip to your hometown, I'm sure. I mean, how many people do you guys have coming to the game?
It's going to be a lot. This is where we went to high school. We still have a good amount of friends here. We both come from big families. They're all coming to the game. It's weird to like feel like you're coming home, but also be in enemy territory technically at the same time.
Is this the first time? Probably not, right? Because I know in preseason, the Bengals and Colts used to play each other a lot, but how many times have the Colts and Bengals played since Ryan was drafted by the Colts?
I think twice.
Okay.
At least since we've been together. Ryan and I met after his rookie year, even though we're from the same hometown, went to the same elementary, same high school.
Which, by the way, is Lakota West, right?
Lakota West,
okay.
Yeah.
Just I wanted to get that in there.
Go Firebirds. So we are from, our parents' driveways are 5 minutes from each other.
It's crazy.
But we didn't know each other because I'm 3 years elder and what I like to call a cougar. So we didn't know each other. We met later in life. And it's kind of crazy. We met very romantically, the old-fashioned way, drunk in a bar in Atlanta. And we are together now. We've been in Indy ever since. So long story short, Rye, since we've been together, and I'm pretty sure his whole season, he's in season 8, we've played the Bengals twice. Once here, and then they've come to us once or twice, actually. So this might be the third or fourth time. Third.
So
to fact check.
What year was Ryan in the NFL when you guys met?
So we met in 2017. He had just finished up his rookie season with the Colts.
Okay. So you weren't there on draft night?
No.
You met after. Why was he in Atlanta?
Because he went to Alabama, and a lot of his Alabama buddies like moved to Atlanta after. So they were in town for a wedding. Are
you guys big Roll Tide people in the Kelly house, or is that not really your jam?
The Kelly is absolutely. So everyone gives me this all the time. I'm absolutely, if we're watching Alabama, I'm cheering for them. I wouldn't have said like I drank the Kool-Aid. I didn't really get it because I wasn't part of that chapter. But actually last offseason, Ryan took me to Tuscaloosa for the first time. And
it's pretty cool.
1,000% have drank the Kool-Aid. So now it is like Roll Tide. Our boys are always decked out in Roll Tide. Ryan is very proud, as he should be, for being a Bama guy and earning that spot and what he did there. But he's also pretty humble about it.
Yeah.
You know, like he's always watching them. He's always supporting them. But like, it's not going to ruin his day if they lose. And I don't know. So I think he's a mild Bama guy.
I'm sure he's pretty excited that they're in the college football playoff, right?
Oh, that's crazy. Yes.
That was a fun game to watch last weekend.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure we saw that coming.
Yeah.
But
and not a lot of people did.
Why college football is so
amazing. It's amazing.
Yes.
Right. But you were also a star athlete. I was doing some reading about you. A basketball player, correct?
Yes.
Where did you play college basketball at?
So I played I played basketball at Longwood University. It's a smaller D1 school. Back then, we were independent. We were like one of the only 2 independent schools left in Division I history. I think it was us and Notre Dame. And then I think after my senior year, they got into the Big South Conference. And then last year was the first year that both men and women made the tournament. And so they played in Indianapolis, and Rye and I went.
Cool.
We took my family. It was pretty awesome.
So a lot of I mean, the fact that Ryan went to Alabama coming from Lakota West, I mean, a lot of sports fans know him, of course. So it was a big deal when he got drafted in the first round, even in Cincinnati, because it's like, the Cincinnati community just wants the people from Cincinnati to do well. It's one of my favorite things about moving back to the Midwest is just how it feels like everybody is kind of just rooting for everyone. And that's how I feel like this week is for you guys, because yes, Ryan is on the opposite team of the Bengals, but first of all, everybody that I have asked about Ryan says he is like so wonderful and just awesome to work with and deal with. And those are people that I knew of him in high school and in college. So sounds like he is
gonna go right to his head.
Yeah. But it sounds like he is just awesome. And I'm kind of bummed that he can't join us, but I'd rather just talk to you. But for this week for him, is it a weird week for him emotion wise, or?
This is a big week for us because we're coming back to Cincinnati for him to play. Mm-hmm. So we grew up here. He grew up cheering for the Bengals. Now he's playing in the stadium that he grew up dreaming about as a kid. Although he's on the other side, it's still kind of awesome. I think no matter how long you play in the NFL, there's still some things where you get goosebumps, where you kind of walk into maybe all of them, but especially like your hometown team. And just to play in front of all of the people you love who don't really get the opportunity to see you other than on TV. So it's big. And it's also the first week that we have bringing our boys home to Cincinnati.
Oh my gosh.
So this
How
is a big
special.
deal. Yeah. So this is a lot of our extended family and friends are going to meet our boys for the first time this week.
Wow.
So he's playing for a lot this week.
That's amazing.
And we are also coming up on the 2-year anniversary of losing our daughter.
Yeah.
Her second, or what should be her second birthday, is on the 17th. So there's just like a lot going on.
It's amazing.
It's really awesome to come home to friends and family with all this going on and to have this.
That just warms my heart. Well, that makes me even more grateful that you gave us some time to come and talk about everything. I'm so excited. So since you kind of just like teed me up, a lot of people obviously knew about Ryan just because of how good he is and, being a professional athlete. But then I feel like the Kelly name really took a turn in terms of people knowing who you guys are after, what was it, a Hard Knocks episode or the viral video? But that's how I first learned about what happened to you. So I will just kind of start it off by saying your story is so inspirational. And when I saw that the Bengals were going to play the Colts, all I wanted to do was just talk to you, because as a woman who I've had to overcome a fair share of adversity, what you have gone through is just like, in just the way that you've navigated it is so impressive. And I feel like as a woman who is fortunate enough to have a platform, like these are the opportunities that I want to take advantage of. And with what you went through, it's such I don't know the word for it, but like sticky situation that a lot of people have questions about how to help and questions about how to go through situations like what you did. So the fact that you are so willing to be an open book, I just wanted to say, first of all, like, thank you so much for the opportunity to let me talk to you about this. And I'm hoping that the amount of people that we can help with this is the whole goal of this. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me ask you questions in a topic that I know isn't easy to talk about. So I will, for those that don't know, just kind of summarize your story as much as I could, but I want to do it through your words because I don't want to miss any of the important parts of the story. So do you want to kind of just start it here with what happened with your daughter, Mary Kate, and then how that's led you just told us about your 2 sons. So I just want to, not everybody, a lot of people I'm sure know your story, but those that don't, can we start from the beginning? Is that easiest?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. You always got to start from the beginning in this too. So Ryan and I discovered we were pregnant with our first. quickly after our wedding, it happened naturally for us. And I don't say that insensitively because we'll get to that in later and our two boys. But, I always joke, he kind of sneezed on me. It was during camp and we somehow were pregnant and it was magical. You're coming off the high of your wedding. And so we're going into a new season. I find out I'm pregnant. We had just played the Seahawks. It was the very first game of the season. I found it out. I felt like eternity for him to get home from that game. And I could share the news that we were expecting. So during that time too, during this season, HBO Hard Knocks was covering the Colts in season. And so when they found out, they joked too, it was like something in the water that off season because 8 or 9 of us were expecting on the team, which is funny because I think that's happening at the Bengals right now.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Yes, there's quite a bit. So a lot of us were pregnant. Ryan and I decided, so our neighbor at the time, who lived 2 doors down, was the right guard for the Colts at the time, Mark Lewinsky. They were also pregnant. So we decided we wanted to do this gender reveal at the stadium. I wanted it to be special. It was our first. And at that time too, Indy was it is still and will forever be such a huge part of our life. And it just felt right to capture this moment in that stadium so that we could always have it and look back on it. And so we decided to do it in the stadium with our friends on the team who were also pregnant. And we found out we were having a girl. We found out we were having our Mary Kate. So we agreed to let Hard Knocks film the reveal. And it was by far, I think, one of the happiest days of my whole life. Ryan and I just had talked to Ryan comes, he's only got his brother. I come from all girls. You really do only want a healthy baby. But I'm not going to lie. We wanted a girl so badly. And we got her. So it was just I can't even describe to you the emotions. And I say this because it was too good to be true, right? You get this fairy tale wedding, you're pregnant, you get the girl. And then shortly after that so we did our gender reveal the day after Halloween. And then in December, I went in, for my 18-week visit went in. She was great, had a really strong heartbeat. They were bragging about how, strong and healthy she looked and, went home. And then 2 weeks later, I noticed that, I was going out for my day and this was around COVID. It was still kind of the height of that. So Ryan, was just kind of recovering from that. We were separate. He was quarantining somewhere else. So I was quarantined too. I wasn't ill, but just being extra safe. So I've been in the house for 10 days. Cause it was still 10 days. I can't even believe that. When you think about that was real life. So we're coming off the 10-day quarantine. I'm so excited for freedom and I'm going out and I'm that's weird. And I had noticed it a day or two before. I remember speaking with my husband, I don't feel her movements, but it's your first, you don't really know anything. Not to be disrespectful, but we just don't do a great job of telling women, what to look out for and what could happen. And that's why we're so vocal about all of this now. But so I didn't know what to expect so I didn't feel her movements. But I was that's fine. I just started to feel the movements for the first time. So I didn't think anything of it because I didn't have anything to base it off of. And then a couple of days later, I started to notice all of my symptoms disappearing. So where my breasts were really tender and just things like that are very normal and common in your pregnancy, just honestly disappeared overnight. And so I definitely was worried. But you go to Google and they're that can be common. Those things can disappear. So I was going in, or no, I wasn't. I was going out. I was running errands for the day and I noticed a little bit of bleeding. And to be honest, it was not really something, that would alarm me. It was a very minimal amount of spotting. But I just didn't have a good feeling. And because I wasn't feeling her movements anymore, and like I said, all of my symptoms seemed to disappear overnight, I called the hospital and they were you should come in right away. So I knew I just knew. I don't know how. You talk about your motherly instincts kicking in, and I certainly believe that when you're pregnant. And I also certainly believe when you know something's wrong. So I say all of that to take a break in this. Like, if you are feeling anything off, you should go in. You're never being a nuisance. Who cares if you are? You should always, always, always go in if you feel like something is off. So I waited a few days, and then I finally went in, and I'll never forget. I went in, I had this adorable, bubbly nurse, and, I was dressed up, I was running errands, I was in a Christmas outfit, and, she's talking about my shoes, and we're hitting it off, and then she just goes silent. And she goes, I apologize. It definitely never gets easier, no matter how many times we talk about it. But she just said, I'm new here. I don't think I'm doing this right. I'm going to go grab the doctor. And like I said, you just know. So the doctor came in, she does the ultrasound, and she says, honey, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And so nothing can prepare you for that moment. She just, from there, it would go on to, we were so far along. So we were 2 days shy of the 20-week mark, which is halfway through pregnancy. So we were told we would have to deliver our daughter, which, all was really terrifying. You're trying to process just that there's no heartbeat and trying to wrap your mind around what that means. I always say, like, the night before we were planning our nursery and getting her crib out, and then less than 24 hours, they're telling you that she's not there, and that you should start making arrangements. It's all really cruel. And just, so, we would go on, we would deliver my daughter, my perfectly beautiful, healthy girl, whose heart just stopped for reasons we now kind of know, but don't. And so, that kind of started and kicked off this whole thing. So where that happened to be 2 days before a huge game for the Colts. So by the time that I had delivered her, I was in labor for about 36 hours. And by the time we did, I think we were a day or 2 days before the Patriots game, which is a very historically significant game. It's a rival between, it's a big rival for the Colts, one of the biggest, I think, especially between the owners.
I know that.
Yeah. So, it was a big deal, a big game. And I think the playoffs were still in reach. Like I said, Ryan had missed the game before. And so, they had just announced that Ryan was going to be out. We let everyone know what was going on. The Colts organization couldn't have been more respectful and loving to our family. If, they were like, take all the time that you need. So the report goes out that Ryan's out for personal reasons, and we just start, the DMs just start coming in, and they're really cruel. They're really negative. No one could have known what we were going through, but just, that's always kind of the downside with professional sports is,
people forget that you're humans.
Oh yeah. Yeah. People love to take the human aspect out of it for these guys. And so we started to get a lot. And so I was kind of put in a position where I was like, I'm going to say something publicly, or at least allude to it, so that people know to back off and leave us alone, literally in the worst days of our entire life. At that moment, the last thing either of us could think about, even though it's my husband's livelihood, is football. You learn very quickly what matters in life, and football is amazing. I have so many wonderful things to say about it, but there are so many things that are so much bigger, especially your family. And so, that just wasn't anything. But again, I wanted to create some space and peace for Ryan and I to start grieving the loss of our daughter, and so that everyone would kind of get the hint and leave us alone. So we ended up sharing, with the intention of just having people give us some space and stop the floods of messages, about missing a game. And what that did was literally rip the lid right off of this unbelievable lost community. I mean, we had no idea what we were doing when we put that post out. But so we put it out, and then less than 24 hours, Ryan and I had tens of thousands of messages from people all over the world. I think our story got picked up. It kind of just was a snowball effect. Like the local news picked it up, and then the national news picked it up. And so from then, like I said, we just started receiving tens of thousands of messages from families all over the world saying like, we've gone through what you've gone through, and we lost our baby, and here's what helped us. And all of that to say, it's so isolating. It was the scariest time in my entire life. I literally thought we were the only people on earth. I didn't know anyone. I didn't even know what stillbirth was, like, to be honest. It was just like something far distant. A friend of a friend of a friend may have gone through it, someone's parents, but we were never, ever directly affected by that. So I really didn't know I didn't know the difference between stillbirth, miscarriage. You know, I'm kind of ashamed of that, but, and then it happens to you. And like I said, you just feel like you're the only person on earth that it's happened to. And so by sharing our story, we learned very, very quickly that we were not alone at all, and that there were so many people going through this. But I also realized that people needed this community. So why there was a community, there was still a lot of like missing dots and like missing connections. Like people want to talk about this. People want to talk about their babies. But they just didn't know how. And we certainly live in a society and just like the world, it's still not where it needs to be on accepting loss and talking about it the way that it should, because it's not, it's horrible. I was going to say, like, while it is very painful and uncomfortable, we need to talk about it, and we need to support those going through it. We need to provide resources for those going through it. And so that's what kind of kicked all of this off for us. We realized really quickly that there was a lot of work to be done. And there's so many people going through it. People just don't know really where to turn. And so, you know, I'm not naive, enough to know, or I'm not naive enough to think that it was by chance. Like, I know because of who my husband is and who our platform is, or like what his platform is, we had a real opportunity to try and push for change and kind of just push for people to hear us and say our babies' names and, you know, start advocating for more work to be done in this environment, because we certainly need it. And all those who have experienced loss really need this.
So I think what stood out to me, and there's, I promise, a happy ending to the story. What stood out to me from afar is I didn't know you, but I obviously work covering an NFL team. So I keep up with everything that's going on in the NFL. And I remember watching you on Hard Knocks. And I just remember thinking that was so cool, how you guys did the gender reveal, everything. And what I remember caught my attention to the point that I saw and I stopped and I watched it was the video that the Colts, when the Colts gave Ryan, Jim Irsay gave him the game ball. And I think that's when I really started to gravitate towards wanting to know more about your story and wanting to know more about you. And it's crazy because you're talking about something that, do you know the percentages of, I didn't get a chance to look at it, but women that miscarry? I mean, it's just really 1 in 4. Yeah. It's so common. And how many have, and what's the percentage for stillbirths?
I should know this, and shame on me for not knowing the percentage. So I actually, part of my job, I'm on the board of directors for a maternal health company. And so one of the things we advocate for is stillbirth prevention for preventable stillbirths. So I know that 25% of stillbirths are preventable. I just don't know the exact numbers that occur, but of those that occur.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well, and like, even I still feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about it because you just want to be so careful on such a delicate situation, which is why I've really appreciated feeling like I can ask you questions and not offending you, because it is a topic that I feel like a lot of people don't know how to talk about because they don't want to be offensive. But so
really quickly, I just remembered, I'm pretty sure 1 in 100 are stillbirths, because I remember that's like, you have a 1% chance of it happening.
So,
which sounds low, but 1 in 100 it's
a lot.
Yeah.
And And so I remember seeing that video and being like, wow, I can't imagine that. I remember watching you on Hard Knocks, and then I was like, I'm so glad that Jim Irsay did that. And what I think is so amazing about your story is there are so many women NFL fans. And most people think that football is all just like this tough, bro guys. It's a guys only sport, but the connections that women can have with the sport too. And I feel like you took it to a new level of women NFL fans feeling like they can connect with the sport and what you guys as wives go through, but you specifically in that they felt a connection to you. And I even felt like that. I didn't know you. And that's what I feel like is one of the most special things about you is that you have taken something that is so horrific and just unimaginable and taken it as an opportunity to help others. And I just think that is so commendable. And that's why I really wanted to have you on, because what you're doing to try and help people by talking about it is just so amazing. And I wanted to ask you a couple questions that have been sent in before we get to the rest of your story, because these are more about stillbirth and the miscarriage process.
Yes.
So thank you to all the people that sent questions in, but I got a lot. But there were 3 that were kind of the most common. And the first one that I saw the most was, how do you support someone? And like I just said, even I'm a little bit uncomfortable talking about it because you don't want to say the wrong thing. But for those people that either know someone or want to help from afar and say, someone very close that just went through either a stillbirth or a miscarriage, I feel like there's probably a lot of confusion on you don't want to keep checking in and asking people because you don't want to keep reminding them. So as someone who went through that process, how can people support those that have gone through it in the best way?
So the best thing, I love this, by the way, and I have a little shameless plug, but it's important to this. So I feel like so much of my purpose now is in this realm and helping others who go through this. So I'm actually launching my website for grief.
Did we
and
just
loss
break
support.
news on this podcast?
We
Breaking news.
did.
This just in.
So it is. So we are launching my website at the end of this month.
Amazing.
And so I will have all of this on here too.
Okay.
So like resources and all of this. So, but this is the number one question we get asked all the time. And the best piece of advice I can give, one of my friends said it to me, and it sounds simple, but just show up. So, a lot of people are like, if there's anything I can do, you can do, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. Well, we don't know what we need, right? And like you're just so singular focusing on surviving. If you're close to the person, just show up, do their laundry, drop off some food. But I would say too, the biggest misconception is people avoid talking about the loss or mentioning your baby's name. Maybe you don't have a name for your baby yet, but your baby counts. And in all we ever want to know, but especially in those first few months, is that we need to know that our baby counted and that no one will forget them. And so that's having those conversations. Stop avoiding bringing up, the loss or the miscarriage or dancing on eggshells. Address them. Tell them. Like my favorite thing was just like, do you want to talk about her? Do you want to talk about it? Or just saying her name too. And then part of the things that really helped too were like the gifts where people would make donations in her name. So for me, it was knowing that my daughter's name is somewhere and it will be forever. And so she'll live on and her spirit will live on. So I know we kind of went I kind of went all over, but to bring it full circle is show up for your people, especially if you're close. Meals, laundry, the things that you would do if people just brought their baby home, right? Like, let them focus on healing. And so understanding too, like sometimes you got to stay in bed all day, right? Like sometimes that is just surviving, and that's doing enough. And so, if you're my friend and you're going through this, like, I'm coming over, I'm going to do your laundry, I'm going to sit and cry with you. I'm just going to show up. And whenever you're ready, if you want to talk about it, some people don't want to, but I'm going to be there for you, whether you do or you don't want to talk about it. I think is the number one most important thing. There's also a lot of resources that help me. I will just say the two biggest things that I relied on. One was there's a Molly Bear. It's an organization called Molly Bear. You can design a bear after your baby, and it can even match your baby's birth weight if you got that far, or if you didn't, but you want something just tangible in place of your baby since you're coming home with empty arms. It is the perfect thing to have and hang on to. My husband and I both held on and cried into that teddy bear for a while. And she's still part. We just did our photo shoot with her. It's something that just represents our girl and always will. So
I saw that today, or was it yesterday, that you posted on Instagram a picture of her burial site.
Yeah.
So can you talk about your decision to go through with doing that?
Yes, absolutely. So we, Ryan and I are Catholic. Mm-hmm. Ryan and I are very faithful. And so it was never a question for us whether we wanted to bury her or not. But what I wish, and we had this, but the advice I want to give to everyone is this is, again, a big way for people to show up for your people. When you've lost your baby, the last thing that you should be doing is Googling cremating places or funerals, places to bury your child. So if, as a family member or a close friend, you should take that on. Ask them what their wishes are. So for us, it was our mother-in-law. I couldn't stand the thought of Googling infant cemeteries. Mm-hmm. And so our mother-in-law took it all on for us, and we just said we want to bury her. We had no idea at the time that there were infant plots or infant sections in places. And so she did all of it. She found the funeral home for us. She set it up. She worked with the hospital to set it up. So just all of that work is nothing you should be doing in those first 48 hours or, even 72 hours after losing your baby. And it is very important work. So I would just say, have someone that you can express your wishes to and have them execute it for you. So, we decided to bury her. For us, there is no right or wrong thing. Whatever is best for you, for your baby, if that is cremating her, him, if that's, donating their body or their remains, whatever is best for you is the right answer. There is no right or wrong in this. It's just whatever's going to bring you peace. So for us, for Ryan and I, we wanted somewhere to visit. I know that her earthly body is there. I fully believe that my daughter's in heaven. But I still really wanted somewhere to visit, and I wanted somewhere, for our future children to go to and, have a place that was special and a place for us to have always to visit and kind of keep her spirit with us.
I have two more questions on this subject, and then I want to get to the happy part of your story. But for we have a lot of male listeners for this podcast, and being mostly geared towards Bengals stuff. But how would you say, we talked about how to support someone, but specific to a man who, whether it be their girlfriend, their wife, how would you say the best way to support your significant other in this situation is, and if you're comfortable sharing some of the ways that Ryan, really helped you through, just so that if this were to happen to someone and they want to know how to best support their significant other, what would you say that is?
So this is such an important question. And, the first thing I can say is that there are not a lot of communities for men, especially in this realm. There's a lot more for women. But there is one called the Sad Dads Club, and they do an excellent job of providing resource and community for lost dads all around the country. So you need community. You cannot do this or shoulder this alone. And you can't always talk to your spouse about what you're going through. Like, to be honest, and this is the mistakes that Ryan and I made early on, is you do not grieve the same. Especially men and women. We all choose to grieve in our own ways, and each of us has to honor that for each other. And that's really hard. So for me, I was crying. I was like, I had some days like rage, like screaming, crying. And Ryan very much internalizes things. He's, kind of a gentle giant, and he's not emotional. He's very level-headed. And so I remember screaming at him, like, you don't care as much as me. Like, why aren't you crying? And I know I didn't really mean that, but I couldn't understand why he wasn't expressing it so outwardly. And so that is not who my husband is. And even though I knew that deep down, when you're going through something like this, it's really hard. There's no logic or level-headedness really in this. So, we learned that you should find resources outside. And this community is a great one. And then the other thing we did for us that really worked was grief counseling. But, I could go on about this, but the other thing I will just say is men by nature they think that they have to be tough for us women, like especially as like the men of the household. So Ryan felt like he had to be strong and that he couldn't show weakness and that he couldn't be upset because he was so worried about me and taking care of me and my emotions that he held it all in. And that isn't the right answer for anyone. I'm not saying that you have to chat about it and be an open book, but you certainly shouldn't suppress it all and not talk about it at all, or because there's just things. Eventually, it has to come out, and mostly, it's not in the healthiest of ways if you try to ignore it and try and push it deep down. So there is no shame in admitting that you're not okay. There is no shame in admitting that you're broken, that you're sad. You don't have to cry about it, but you certainly don't want to lock it up and keep it to yourself. So that's the advice I can give for men.
I think that's super helpful, and a lot more people will relate to that than, people are probably willing to admit. So let's now pivot to after you were able to get through the grief process and able to get your mind to the question of, are you willing and ready to try again? How did you know when you were? And then can you take it from there as far as how you guys started life and what came after that?
Absolutely. So I'll never forget on that hospital bed after delivering Mary Kate, I was so fearful that we'd never have children again. And at that moment, we had no idea why we lost her. They just kept saying it was a fluke. And so I just remember thinking, like leaning over, like, we got to try again. This can't be it, and all of these fears and everything. And then you go home and you realize no, we need some time to heal. So Ryan and I needed time to physically heal. That was doctor's orders. And so that was around, I think the 3-month mark. And then, Ryan and I at this time, we felt like we were mentally in a place to start trying. We really, really wanted a family too. I would even say that we were desperate for family and for children. And then, when your child gets taken from you, it just adds an entire another level of desperation and longing. And so, I think around the 3 or 4 month mark, we decided to try. And, beforehand, I would say I was kind of ignorant to the process of getting pregnant. I wasn't tracking ovulation, any of that. I didn't know what it took. Yeah. So, for a month or two, we did we're not going to try. And then, a month or two after a negative pregnancy test, I was like, oh no, I can't. I was already so devastated. I was like, we need to be intentional about this. So I would go on for, I think, 7 or 8 months, exhausting myself with how to get pregnant, tracking my ovulation, doing everything in quotation marks right, to get pregnant. And, month after month after month after month, it was a negative test. And so I actually related to this a little bit, on social media, but on Thanksgiving of last year, we were hosting all of our families, and I got that monthly reminder I was definitely not pregnant. And I Something broke. I mean, we were already in a pretty dark place. Like if you're going through this, I wish I could squeeze you because I know what it feels like, to see that negative test, to want something so badly. I've never wanted anything more in my entire life. And you can't control any of it. And so, both of us wanted it so bad. It was one of the biggest dreams we ever had. And it's, month after month, it's not happening. And so, and also this is the thing about the NFL. And just in general, we're just at that age. It was social media. Everyone around us, it felt like, including like my family members, my best friends, like everyone was getting pregnant and we were not. And it's so hard because you are happy for those people. And at the same time, like you want to crawl into a ball and never come back out. Like you just, it's devastating. And you're just in that phase where it's just happening for everyone else and it's not happening for you. And you're doubly pissed because you've also lost a child. And so, anyway, so Ryan and I, during all this too, I was very against, getting help, like fertility doctors. That to me was like, it was toxic to me just because that was admitting that I needed help and I couldn't do it. And I had so much, like, I don't want to say I had pride, but it's like the competitive nature almost in me where I was like, I had no problem getting pregnant before. Like this will happen. Yeah. And it wasn't. And so I finally, we finally saw a fertility doctor just for, kicks and giggles. Like let's just go see one. Let's see. I just want to say too, like everything on paper looked great. Like I was regular, like nothing was wrong, but he goes, you should do IVF. And I was like, bye, like wanted to throw my purse at him and walk out the door. Like that to me was just worst case scenario. I was so against it. And I remember sobbing, calling, my OBGYN who delivered Mary Kate, who I have a phenomenal relationship with. And I was bawling and I was like, he says I have to do IVF and I'm not doing it. And, like, what do I do? And she just said, let me just ask you this. She was like, you can try, ABC. There's a lot of methods to fertility treatments. And she was like, you can try X, Y, and Z. And she was like, but are you going to be mentally okay if we're still in the same place that we are 6 months from now and you've tried all this? And I don't know why, like her saying that for me. And again, I want to say, like, if you're XYZ, like if you want to do those steps, that's wonderful. Like that just, our doctor kind of said we had to do IVF basically, based on blood work and things. And I think I was just putting so much pressure on my body and my body was shutting down from all the stress. Yeah. So I want to say that again, I am not encouraging anyone to go straight to IVF. I'm just saying that's what was recommended to us. And so that was the advice we were given. And like I said, like I was so far past like depression at this point. Like mentally, I can't even tell you where I was. I was so broken that's why that was the answer for us, because I really didn't think I could take many more months of just like the heartache and the negative reminders. So in that moment, I decided that's it. Like, you're right. We're going to go for IVF. And we did. And so that was on Thanksgiving. On Christmas Eve, we would go on to start IVF, the process of it. And I'm here to say, so Ryan and I can't even tell you, like we call our boys miracle boys because they are in every sense. So Ryan and I decided to go for 2. That's like my favorite football term. And, it like Indianapolis loves to go for 2. And, now here we are, we wanted to put 2 in just because the odds are better. And so we put 2 in and I'm not even gonna lie, like, because I felt robbed, because we lost our daughter. I was so open. Like I would take as many children as possible if I could, like that's just where I was mentally. Yeah. And so we put 2 embryos in, we did a fresh transfer. And, so we had our our implant day. They put our boys in. We had no idea that they were boys. A fresh transfer means you're going in blind. So there's no genetic testing. There's no gender testing. They literally remove your eggs. They fertilize them. You got to make it past, the 5-day mark of fertilization. And then they put those two of our embryos back in. And so that was it. We had no idea what to expect. We had no idea if they would take. And so, IVF is a lot of hurry up and wait. So we put the boys in on January 10th, I think it was. And on January 20th, they said, you've got to wait this 10-day mark to know if they stuck or not. And then after that, it's another 10-week, point to know if there are heartbeats. So, it was probably the most excruciating time. You've gone this far, you're doing it. Being a lost parent, you try not to let yourself, hope is what kills you.
Yeah.
And so there was no letting myself get my hopes up. I was so hard on myself. I truly believed that if I got excited or hopeful, I was going to lose Omer. We had just been in this cycle of negativity for so long that I thought there was no way out. Mm-hmm. So, Ryan and I are very, very lucky. I want to say too, that's not always the case. First time success, it could take multiple rounds, and that is okay. It's painful, but, whatever it takes to get your babies. And so, these guys were just meant to be for us. And we, so fast forward to that January 20th, you're supposed to wait for the doctor to tell you, you're supposed to wait to go into the doctor's office to tell you that you were pregnant. I could not. I don't recommend that because there's false positives or false negatives. And so anyway, I snuck into the bathroom on January 19th, the day before we were supposed to go into the doctor, and took a pregnancy test. And there was the faintest, second line. And so I just ran out bawling, and showed Ryan the test, and, he started crying, and we just held on to each other for, I can't even tell you how long. And that was the beginning of, the best and hardest journey for us. So I want to wrap this up too, but I would go on to have a very, very hard first trimester. I was on bed rest. I had something called a subchorionic hematoma. So that meant that there was a lot of scary bleeding involved. So when I tell you that showering, just walking up the stairs to get into the shower was an Olympic sport, I really do mean that. So that was a really brutal time for me, the first trimester. And so there was just so much fear. I mean, every time I went to the bathroom, I was checking for blood, because that's just what or history. I was just so terrified. And like I said, I couldn't let myself get excited or accept it. So it was a really hard first trimester. Second trimester was amazing. I would go on, I started to feel like myself again. I'm feeling the boys move. And we get past that dreaded 20-week mark where we lost our daughter. And you realize, I think at that 20-week mark is where I seriously think I took the first real deep breath and thought, okay, we're going to be okay. And then you get past the 24 to 26 week mark, which is viability, which means that if you were to give birth, your babies have the odds are better for them making it if they were to be born at that time. So 26, Ryan and I are on vacation. It's the month off before camp starts. We go to Florida. And the last night we're in Florida, I noticed that baby A's movements are off. And so we rush to the hospital immediately. I'm monitored for 24 hours and they send me off. So we're and Ford was baby A. So he starts moving. And so, we're all right, we're good. So we had a wedding in Nashville, one of my good girlfriend's wedding. And I remember telling Ryan, I was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm done traveling after this. We're going to go to this wedding and we're going to go home and we're packing it up. I'm really getting to this point, because at that point with 2, I'm as pregnant as most are, and full term with a singleton. So I'm getting really uncomfortable. And, my doctor said it was fine to travel. We had no reason, not to think other than that scare, but we had been monitored and released. So cut to, we get to Nashville, and I'm at my friend's like rehearsal dinner and welcome party, feeling great, but super tired that night. The next day, long story short, I just started having multiple signs of preterm labor. Like if you Google preterm labor, I had about 3 of the 5 of them. We called our doctor and she was like, are you cramping or bleeding? Are you in pain? I was like, no. And then about 2 to 3 hours later, as we're getting ready to leave for my friend's wedding, I started having contractions. And it was a 15-minute drive from the hospital. I mean, anyone listening, if you are pregnant, if you are going anywhere out of town, Google anywhere that has a NICU, like have a plan. You never think it's going to happen to you. And let me just tell you, it can happen. I'm like the perfect example of things never happening that happened. So we at least knew that much. We knew where to go to if anything were to happen. It was 15 minutes from our hotel. By the time that I was in the lobby from our hotel to I'm in the checkout desk at the emergency OBGYN, I'm having full-blown contractions. So, again, long story short, I would go on to deliver my boys. I was hospitalized for 5 days. We got myself to 27 weeks, every day. And pregnancy is a huge deal. Like the difference between 26 weeks and 27, like just what that does to their lungs, is huge. So we were able to keep them in for a little bit longer. I delivered on 27 weeks exactly, which is, the start of your first trimester, if you will. I mean, I was literally like an entire trimester early delivering these boys. So, we're away from home. We're in Nashville, Tennessee, and the head of, fetal medicine comes in and goes, prepare to be here for 6 months. If your boys make it, you prepare to be here for 6 months with them in the NICU. So, you're sitting there in a hospital bed, and although it's much different and now you've got the shot at them living, it's like, I'm back to that hospital bed in Indianapolis all over again. And, so you're trying to prepare yourself. You're like, what do you mean 6 months? Like, that's not possible. My husband's season starts in 1, we got to be home. And again, this is so bigger. This is so much bigger in football. No one cares. Certainly no one in the hospital cared that my husband had to get back and play football. And so, I'm so proud of Ryan and I for getting through that. I look back and I don't know how we survived it. We spent, 90 days in the hospital. The boys spent 85 days in the NICU. I was there every single day for 12 hours. And I'm like so excited to say we've been home for 2 months now. They are the most beautiful. They're so healthy. They're amazing, baby boys. And I just can't believe I'm sitting here telling you that I have twin baby boys who are here right now, getting ready to watch their dad on Sunday at the Bengals, our hometown stadium, after everything that we just went through. Cause I'm telling you, I sat in that NICU and I thought we were never getting out, and I thought I was never going to survive this. And there were so many days I wasn't sure if the boys were going to survive it or not in those early months. And they did. And so they're miracles in every way, from sticking to just surviving. And now they're here and they are so tough. I mean, these boys are tough as nails and they're so resilient, and they're so stinking cute. I know I'm biased, but I'm here to say that just to wrap this all up for you, if there were like a birth trauma bingo card, I think that Ryan and I have pretty much hit every single one of them. And if you're going through any of this right now, if you've lost, if you're going through infertility, if you're going through IVF or fertility treatment, if you're sitting in the NICU right now wondering, if and when your baby's going to come home, you're not alone. Like we've pretty much been through it all. And you're not alone, and you're going to survive this. And something good is waiting for you on the other side of this. You won't even recognize yourself on the other side of this. So just hang in there. Don't lose faith. Keep going forward. Please let us be an example of just, all the joy and all the things that can happen. If you just don't give up on yourselves and on your dreams.
You say your boys are angels, and I feel like I'm talking to a real life angel because I knew your story, but the way you just explained it, I can't even wrap my head around just how much you have gone through. And like you said, it seems like, can you catch a break? And And I have a couple questions for you that I'm going to try and go through fast because Emma and I and a couple friends are going to dinner. So we are excited about that. But did you ever have a moment where you were like, why me again?
Oh, yeah. Like every other day for a little bit. Why us? All I can say is no one is immune to trauma. Mm-hmm. I just want to keep that perspective. It feels like you are the only one going through this. You aren't. I'm not saying that insensitively. I just want you to know, like, there's a lot of people, but I thought about it all the time. But what I chose is if you get lost in that, it'll swallow you. And it is a dark, dark place to be. Why me? And it's not like, why not anyone else? You're not wishing this on anyone else, but the perspective that I've learned is, you can either let it eat you alive, and you can succumb to it, or you can rise above it. You can pull yourself out of it, and you can just choose to move forward every day. And that's where there's so many amazing things and people waiting to pull you out and to encourage you and to get you out. So it's so easy to fall into that trap. And some days, yeah, you do need to just have the why me. It's all right to cry it out, and start over the next day, but you just can't stay there. Perspective is everything. So, just for our NICU experience and our boys, I was in that bed and I was like, God, why are you doing this to me again? Like, why can't I just have one health? Everyone else gets their healthy pregnancy and gets to bring their kids home. Why can't I? But then I chose to think God could have, not God, but like we could have lost our boys and we didn't. And we could have been anywhere else but in that NICU in Nashville with the most amazing doctors and nurses. But we got there, like my body held on and did it. So instead of why me, it's just like, this could be so much worse and it's not. So loss is tricky. It's hard but, when you're standing on the other side of it someday, and you will be standing on the other side of it, you'll understand it a little bit more. And you'll understand why not you.
One of the other questions I had for you is, because like we said, so many people unfortunately have to deal with miscarriages or stillbirths. Do you feel like there is, when you talk about like manifestation and what you think in your head could potentially trickle down to the energy for your baby, do you feel like there's a direct correlation in terms of what you think in your head can actually have an impact on what happens? And I say that because there's so many people that are probably like you that are so scared to be happy when they find out that they're pregnant again. And does that not being able to celebrate your baby, like, where do you stand on those that are struggling to be happy after they're able to get pregnant after having a miscarriage or a stillbirth?
So this is really hard to take this advice, but every baby deserves to be celebrated. And that's what I had to come to with my boys. I did not want to acknowledge it for fear that if I did, I would lose them, or if I celebrated them, I would lose them. None of us are that powerful. None of us have any control just by thinking things. You are not going to make or break your baby, is what I believe. Especially there's nothing that you could do that could harm your baby. And so, as far as like thoughts and celebrating them, but your baby, from the time that you conceive them, like, they deserve to be celebrated. I understand wanting to wait for the 12 weeks. Again, all of this is what's best for you. But I just think that what I wish I could have told myself was that these boys, even if the worst case did happen, they were still real and they were mine. And I just think that that's really important, is that and the best advice I got was, this pregnancy was not my last. So I want people to hold on. And I said that to myself every day, was that just because it happened to Mary Kate, it's not going to happen to this baby or these babies. So, where I'm not so sure on the manifestation, not for or against it. What I do believe is that I think I put a tremendous amount of pressure and stress on my body the second time around. And I think I think that's probably why I couldn't get pregnant, or was having such a difficult time getting pregnant, because I wasn't. However, I do want to say to anyone who has friends, the last thing that you should say to someone trying to conceive is just relax. It'll happen when you're least expecting it. That is not appropriate to say. It is not helpful. Please stop saying that to people. There is no just relaxing when you've lost a baby or when you've been trying for months. And so what I would say for that is then like start looking into ways that you can like bring down your stress, whether it's supplementing or things like that. But all of that to say, it's not like thinking into existence can have an effect, but I do think that you can put a tremendous amount of stress and pressure on yourself and your body reacts to that. Like it is proven, like if your cortisol levels are through the roof, like it's almost impossible, for your body to do what it's supposed to. So I'm not sitting here saying, just relax, it'll happen when you relax. But I am saying like, if you're putting all this pressure on yourself, that turns to physical, and that can create the roadblock for you into getting pregnant.
The last thing I want to ask you, and it was probably the most frequent question people sent in, was how did you know it was time to start the IVF process?
Yeah. So, this is kind of like a tee up. So I am a big believer in signs. And so for me, like I said, I was so against it. And I'm ashamed of myself for the shame I felt in IVF, because it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful gift. And if that's the route you want to go, you are so brave for doing so. And there's absolutely no shame in it. Sometimes we just need a little help. Take it from someone who got pregnant the first time and then just couldn't the second time. Like it's okay to admit that we need help. So for me, I was in such a dark place, like mentally, it was affecting every single aspect of my life that I couldn't go on that way. So, I saw a fertility doctor. He said he thinks we needed to do IVF. I had a couple really good mentors, including my OBGYN, who were very encouraging about it and eventually kind of thaw that ice for me on IVF. And so, for me, it was that I couldn't keep going on the way I couldn't keep going on the way that I was. So it wasn't really like I was ready. It's just that I couldn't continue on the way that I was, that was kind of like the turner for me. And so, I also want to say too, like, when you Google IVF, like on TikTok and Instagram, like it's always these girls like wincing when they're shots, and there's always just, it feels like a negative, heavy, just like, I don't know what the word is, but it just feels very negative and heavy and painful. And, I had a very positive experience with it. I will just say, like, I think in that life, I just agreed to surrender to everything. So to IVF, to whatever was meant for me, like I was just so tired of trying to control it all and nothing was working out. So that's how we got there. It was the right decision for us because, I just couldn't take being that sad and broken anymore.
You are such an inspiration, and I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. But I just wanted to say that you are just amazing, and I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to talk to me about it. But more than anything, like just the fact that you're being so open and just how many lives you're saving, and just that you're giving this topic that so many people struggle to talk about, but it's so common that you're so willing to be an open book. I can't say thank you enough. And I want to give you the opportunity before we close out to tell those listening where, if they are going through this or they know someone going through it, is there a way that they can communicate with you if they have questions, or just an opportunity on where people can find your thoughts and everything about it, or if they want to directly communicate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on here, Kelsey.
My gosh.
Thank you
so
for giving
much.
us an opportunity just to talk about these things. Because they're so important and they're so much bigger than Ryan and I. And all we're trying to do is just be the people we needed when we were going through it. And we had so many beautiful people rush to our aid and kind of pick us up off the ground during our times that I just want to be that for someone. And I want to be open about it because all of this deserves to be talked about. So if you want to connect, Instagram is such a great place for me, although it's really hard to get to all the messages now. So we do our best, but I have my email in there too. So shoot anything there. And then finally, like I said, I'm launching my website, which is byemmakelly.com. And that is going to have all of a ton of resources from everything we talked about today. How can you support yourself or someone you know going through loss, infertility, IVF, and now even NICU life. So that is going to be the site where I'm going to pour my guts out into just to try and give as many resources on all of these things. And finally, I just want to say this because it is so important. So for any of you who are listening, who are expecting, please count your kicks once you get into the third trimester. Again, I know we all think this is never going to happen to us, and it's probably not. And I say this to encourage you and to take control of your pregnancy, not to scare you about it or try and put fear into you. But it's a great way to bond with your baby. There's an app called Count the Kicks. It's a free app, and it just teaches you how to record fetal movements, get to know your baby's movement patterns in your third trimester. So by 26 weeks, your baby will have a pattern that you can track. If your pattern is ever off, go in. I want to encourage that so much, just because I know that myself and there's so many women, we wish that we could have done things differently in that regards. And so it's so important for us to be monitoring our baby's movements in the third trimester, and it can make all the difference of you bringing your beautiful, healthy baby home or sitting on this side of things, like we are with our Mary Kate. So again, this is to encourage you. It's another great way to bond with your baby in your third trimester, and just take all the precautions.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of Colts fans, but I feel like the army of Kelly family fans now is just probably a crazy number. And I hope that Sunday with your boys, seeing your husband play in the stadium you guys grew up watching and going to is everything you hoped and imagined for, because you deserve it.
Yay. Go Colts. And if you're a Bengals fan, just please cheers for number 78. Thank you. On the Colts.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, Emma. Again, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.